Okay, here we are, the first episode of Ramble and Roll. Well,
Welcome.
rather the introduction episode. We're officially calling this episode 0, and I think I want to go episode 0, Introduction to Destruction, just for the Sum 41 reference.
Absolutely. Why not?
Okay, yeah. So this is gonna serve as like a little taste of what we're trying to do here, like a little something to get you hooked. So to begin, why don't we introduce ourselves? I guess
Absolutely.
I'll start. My name is Mike F. I go by Mike F now because I'm a teacher and I don't want students finding me on the internet any easier than some of them already have. So that's why I'm going by Mike F.
Didn't
Uh,
take long.
no, it did not take long at all. Over to you, Scott.
Um, well, I guess I'm just Scott Richter, and I don't have any students and don't care if anybody finds me on the internet. So, yeah.
Yeah, so
We are
that's
both
us.
from the northeastern corridor of North America, if you will.
I mean, yeah, this is stone's throw away from each other. Speaking of
Just a
that, so
stone's throw with a closed border in between.
how how does a dude from Ottawa meet a guy from Vermont, and how do we end up hosting a podcast together? Why don't we talk a little bit about how we know each other and the evolution of our friendship these 10, almost 12 years,
It's
I
a tale
think,
as old as time.
that we've known each other.
It's
So,
been a long time, that's for sure.
yeah.
I
Do we
mean,
want to start like
I
way
think it
back?
really all starts. w- I, I, I mean, are we going Allentown? Are we talking
No, like, well, before
Dropkick
that, how do we
Murphys?
get
Are
to
we
Allen?
talking
How do we get to Allentown? We have to start there, or else nobody's gonna understand what we're talking about.
POS, my friend? POS. For those of the uninitiated, that would be Punk Oi Ska, which is a now defunct website.
Yeah, it's not piece of shit, punk oi
And
ska. Um,
no, that's just what people call us.
yes, we are the POS. Is should we tell them what kind of site Punk Oi Ska was?
Well,
Or
it's all in the name. So obviously, it was centered on punk music and the subgenres within that. Uh, and you could you had access, we'll say, to all sorts of music, and you could listen to pretty much anything you could find on there. Because you had people from all over the world. I think at its peak, it was 20,000 members, give or take.
yeah, it was big.
Um, it was
Uh,
large. I don't think it ever got to be as big as one of the other ones, but it's definitely up there.
yeah.
And
Um,
yeah, we after you, sir.
what year did you join that website? Do you remember?
Oh God. I really have to think about that. I want to say I was definitely still in high school at that time. So maybe 2006, 2005. I'm not
Damn.
sure which.
So a couple years
Somewhere
before
along
me.
those lines, because I was there very early. Um, and
I
yeah,
I sorry. Speaking over you, I was
no,
gonna
no,
say
go
I
ahead, my
didn't
friend.
join until like 2007, and I didn't start talking in the forums till like 2009. Up to that point, I was just like I was acquiring music uh, through the
Right,
means
right,
provided by the site, and but yeah, like around
absolutely.
2009, I really started posting, and like you were posting like a lot of like Dropkick Murphys like bootleg videos from like way back in the day that you got through like VHS and whatever. I guess you were trading
That
tapes at that time,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. I used to have an Angel Fire website and everything. It's probably still active. That's terrifying to think about.
Yeah. So that was, I think that was our
Um,
bonding. We bonded over our love of Dropkick Murphys, I would say.
yeah, I think that's where it all begins. I think that's really the core of it. And we were, of similar age. We were from
Yes.
a similar area. We were, uh, beyond Dropkick Murphys. There were other bands we were both very into, and just the friendship just made sense from the get go. I feel like.
Yeah, like I don't even remember. I just remember like one day like seeing your name pop up on Facebook and being like, "Oh, that's the guy from Punk Rock Ska. I should add him. He's cool." Because like, yeah, we both had like the same exact
Right, because
taste
we
in
used to have a
music.
Facebook group, I think.
Yeah,
Right.
I think we did. Yeah, and
And
like,
th-
Yeah, because that's where I found you and Chris, our other good friend, at like the same time on Facebook. I just added both of you because you were both like the other two huge Dropkick Murphys fans, and we would like post about Dropkick Murphys on Punkway Scott to
Right.
the point where people were mad at us.
We got a lot of shit for that. We definitely did.
Hmm.
But
So, and
our
then
friendship moved off of that.
yeah, I was gonna say I don't remember even how it came up. I happened to be in Philadelphia around the time the Boston's were playing, but I had to go home before their Philadelphia show. So you like were like, you should come to the Allentown show. So I was like, okay, I guess I'm gonna go drive 2 hours to get my dad to drive me 2 hours to Allentown, Pennsylvania, so I could
Right.
go see the Boston's and meet this dude off the internet who I've never
With,
met before.
with Teenage Bottle Rocket and the Flatliners,
Yes,
as I remember that.
yes. I can
And
never escape the Flatliners.
I
I've
remember
seen them
deciding,
probably 50 times.
well, there's a few bands that are like that. I think that are just tough to get away from, and we don't need to name any names. I know Daniel knows
No,
what we're talking about.
this is a nice podcast. We're gonna keep things nice. I should clarify. I like the Flatliners, so it wasn't really a bad thing. It just like being from my
Oh,
area, you end
absolutely.
up seeing them like all the time.
Right. And I mean, back then they were on Cavalcade. Like that was the record they were
Hmm.
touring,
Hmm.
and that's a great record. I mean, but
Yeah,
yeah, and I remember meeting you at Allentown, and then we did not see each other for 2 years because I
that's
think,
true.
if I remember correctly, because I don't think we saw each other again until the Bruisers.
No, what happened was, yeah, it was kind of weird. Like I remember going to the show and like, no offense, but like from your pictures, I thought you were like a 6 foot tall dude. So the whole night I'm looking for this like 6 foot tall bald guy, and like I don't see anybody that like matches that description around. And like I think I saw you like before the show, but didn't register it was you. And then like later I saw you again. I was like, that must be Scott. So like I finally found you, and like we hung out after the show. But yeah, like no offense, I was like expecting somebody like I don't know why, but, like from the pictures you had on Facebook, for some reason I thought you were like 6 feet tall. I don't know.
That's incredible. I'm definitely not.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
So this whole time I'm like
and
looking
chances
like
are, like, if you're looking for a guy with a shaved head, I was probably wearing a hat too. So you're
yeah,
not.
yeah. I wasn't accustomed to your
uh,
attire yet. Your Avs hat with Pinkerton
the fact
thugs.
that I was gonna say
Sure.
that I only own one shirt, one pair of shorts, and one hat.
Yeah. Okay.
That's it. That's
So
all. That's all you get from
yeah,
me.
yeah. So we go from Punkoi Ska, we go to meeting at the Boston show in Allentown, and then we don't see each other for 2 years until 2000 tons of TNT. I think the year before I went to a Dropkick Murphy show at Tasongas Arena in Lowell, but like you didn't go to that one or something, so we didn't see each
That was
other.
one. Yeah, I remember that was one I couldn't make, and
Hmm.
because I think that was the year that Bruce played with the band,
Yes, it
and
was.
I I could like only make that day or something like that year. So those were the
Yeah,
only shows I was at. And I
yeah.
mean, I
So
guess
like
that kind of worked out on its own way. But
it did because you got to see Springsteen and I got to see Dropkick play at an arena. So, but it's still a fun show.
yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate that you couldn't have joined me that evening. Yes.
No, yes.
But
Yeah.
then you
So
fast forward to what could be,
oh god,
one of the best weekends that I've ever had.
yeah, the
All
best and worst weekends.
all of the negative things. Yeah.
Yeah.
The
So,
positives I think outweighed the negatives that weekend.
oh, 100%. Yeah. So for those who don't know, in 2012, we went to a festival called 2000 Tons of TNT in Hartford, Connecticut.
Scenic, beautiful Hartford, Connecticut. Yes.
And we,
And TNT was like a short-lived show. I mean, or short-lived festival. It was only like 3 years that happened, and
mhm,
the
we
lineups
got
that
the
Pete
best year.
Morrissey was pulling were just absurd. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, absolutely. That year was absolutely phenomenal from start to finish. I
Yeah.
mean,
So,
the first night of that was Stars and Stripes and the Bruisers. I mean, with Forced
mhm,
Reality, and it's like,
mhm.
where do you go from there?
You go to getting robbed at gunpoint is where you go from there.
Yeah.
So
Besides that, you know,
yeah,
Berry
we
Square, live in
we were
infamy forever.
we were hanging around after the show waiting for a cab, and a fellow asked Scott for some weed, and Scott said $100. And instead of pulling out $100, the fellow pulled out a gun and stuck it in the stomach of another friend of ours from Texas, and and said the
Lord.
immortal words "run your pockets," and a legend was born.
Run your pockets. And the thing that
Uh,
I always forget about that night is it was one of the guys we were with. It was Gil's 21st birthday.
it was.
I
What a
will
way to
never
have a
forget
birthday.
that. Yeah,
So I
I
think that
mean,
really
you
cemented
can't
our
really beat
friendship, though.
Hartford.
That experience, we got to
Oh,
see like one of
absolutely.
our favorite bands play live, and then we got. Well, I didn't actually get robbed. I don't. Did you get robbed? I think only the dudes from Texas actually had
No,
stuff
I didn't
taken
get
from
robbed
them.
either. Yeah,
Yeah, so like the
yeah.
three dudes from
You
Texas
and
had
I
like
did
their
not get
phones
robbed.
and wallets taken from them. I think, like, I can't remember how it worked out,
I
but I didn't have
yeah.
anything taken from me. I just remember thinking, if this dude gets to me, all I have left is Canadian money right now. He's gonna shoot me because I have this monopoly money and don't have
Well, that's
anything to
better
give
than
him.
Canadian Tire money.
Just a little bit. So yeah,
Better.
but I think that like whole experience like really cemented our friendship. And like after that, like fuck, like we hung out like a lot for the next like 3 or 4 years,
Oh
like
yeah,
going to shows.
we did a lot in that time.
Like at least a few times a year
We
we would
did a
see each
lot. I
other.
mean,
And then like
absolutely. And I think that's the. Sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, and then the pandemic hit. And now like we don't see each other ever, except virtually.
Right. Now we don't see anybody ever. Just go to
True,
work and come
true,
home.
true.
But, light at the end of the tunnel. Hopefully we will, be able to do something at some point in the relative near future, at least.
One day.
Because, man, those few years, like I can very, very fondly look back on a lot of things and a lot of the experiences and a lot of the people that I met along the way. And I think that that really starts with you and Chris. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, it does. Let's do quick top five shows we've seen together.
Oh God, I mean, we're going Coxbar May 2012.
Yes, that's your number
Number
one.
one.
I agree.
I have to. I don't know. Coxbar in Boston. That night was unbelievable. Everything about it. Something
That
about
was a great
people wanting to mug us. Because the gentleman with the machete that evening.
I still have this like right on my desk.
Oh, there it is. I haven't seen mine in a little bit, but I'm sure it's somewhere in my house.
Mine hangs in a place of honor.
That night, absolutely, as it should. I'm doing a poor job with mine,
Remember that fucking? Oh, I don't want to swear because I don't know. Okay, it doesn't matter. Remember that dude, that random cab that tried to pick us up that wasn't a real cab, and then like some other real cab came and like
Oh my
yelled
God.
at him and like told him to get lost.
And was like, no, don't get in that cab. Do not get in that
yeah.
cab.
Some like illegal taxi.
And like kids at that show had like flipped a police car or a cab or something afterwards.
Yeah,
like,
we missed that
I
because
don't
we were
know.
too cool.
We were still inside.
hanging out with the band, right? So we missed that.
Right. Which was
Coxbar makes me want to flip a
do
car,
not
though.
believe that.
No. I think they're just
totally
probably just
get
like
that as
rocking
well.
it or something, trying to flip it.
Right. We will never know. I mean,
we won't because we
we
were
will
inside
never ever
with
know.
the band. Okay, number two. What's number two on the list of shows we've seen together?
This one's you. I answered the first one a little too fast, I think. So you
Okay,
gotta
I'm
pick
putting
this one.
Lansdowne Pub, Dropkick Murphys with like 300 people doing Do or Die and Sing Loud, Sing Proud front
Reasonable.
to back. Because I didn't get to see the
Playing
Gangs
on
All
the
Here show.
floor.
Yeah, I didn't get to see the Gangs All Here show or the first Do or Die show at Brighton, but I did get to see them playing on like a 6-inch stage with you and Chris and all our other friends at the Lansdowne Pub. That was pretty awesome.
I think that was the best one of the bunch out of the ones you've named there. I think
because it was
that
pure
was certainly
chaos.
the highlight.
Oh yeah, it was.
Yeah,
chaos.
there was just there were no rules. I mean, there was no nothing. They just played on the floor. They played 2 full sets. Like they did not just play Sing Loud, Sing Proud, and Do or Die. Like they opened the show with Independence Day, and I was turned into a meme. You know what I mean?
You were. Yeah. So
like.
Yeah, so that's number 2. So we got Coxbar in Boston, Dropkick Murphys in Boston. What would you put at number 3?
Number three, I'm probably gonna go with the Bruisers that night. I think that's reasonable. If I could lump that whole weekend in as one, I
Hmm.
probably would. But you don't remember Saturday,
No,
and so
I
we don't
don't.
have to talk about that. And
I remember the
and
Four Loco.
Sunday, that's unfortunate. I'm sorry. Nobody should remember Four Loco. But I think like the last band of that weekend that I remember being on the stage was Infrared, and that was a band that at that point I don't think I'd heard for 5 years,
Hmm.
maybe more, and they were fantastic. They were phenomenal. They really put like a wrap on that whole weekend for me.
Yeah.
And you
So
throw in everything in between, and you throw in the hotel and everything, and all the guys being there on Friday night, and that was a good time all around. I don't think you could
yeah,
really beat that,
no,
save
I
for
think we
if they
can.
were real Philly cheesesteaks.
Yes, I think we can count number three as TNT as one whole for number three. I think that's fair.
All right, I think that's
Okay,
good. That works for me.
so number
Back to you for
four.
number four, though.
This is tough. This is tough. I might throw a curveball in here just to.
Uh-oh.
I'm gonna say Ottawa, 2015. I think
What?
2016.
Oh, Legion 76
Legion 76 at House of Targ with
with Thunder and
I
Glory.
with Thunder and Glory and Ironside, who I think were still going by the name Honor
Oh,
Guard at that time. I think that was their first
they were
show.
definitely still honor guard with the
Uh,
moose and the guy with the hockey
yeah,
stick on it on the
yes.
t-shirt. That was great.
So not only is Legion 76 like the best oi band going right now, and Thunder and Glory is up there too. Ironsides are a pretty sweet band. They're my friends, so I gotta shout them out. But I missed this. You got bottled by a skinhead from Gatineau after we
Yeah,
don't have to get into the
a
details,
small
but there
little
was a scuffle, a
bottled me with a
disagreement.
Budweiser.
Yeah. And I remember
And
coming
the
walking
owner of
back
the
from
House
my
of Targ bought me a bunch of shots
yeah. I
because he thought I was
remember
going to sue the venue.
I remember like a friend of mine, her brother like lived like right across the street, and I had gone over to like say goodbye to them because like she was going back to Montreal or something. And then walking back, and like Mike Pouziak comes out, and he's like, "Yo, you got to go see Scott." And then I go in, and like he's got like a bloody head, and like sitting at the bar, like, "What happened?" Like I got bottled. Like okay, or glass. Was it a glass or a bottle? I don't know.
It was a bottle of Budweiser, as I remember it.
Damn.
And I remember driving home the next day and
Yes, you
getting to the
did.
border with a huge gash in this side of my head. And the border patrol, agent to get back into the U.S. was kind of like, "What in the absolute hell happened to you? Like, what were you doing in Canada that you have a large gash untreated, like still openly bleeding on the side of your head?"
And he
And I
let
had
you
to
in.
explain to him that I had been at a bar and gotten hit in the head with a bottle, and he was just he had no idea how to handle that. He was just like, "All right, whatever, go home."
I would be like,
And
yeah,
it
this
was one
guy's
of the
had enough.
fastest times I've ever gotten through the
Yeah,
border.
do
Like,
that every time, man. Just like, yeah, gotta go. Like,
yeah, just cut your head open. If you need to get through the border quickly, that's how you do it.
okay,
That's the way. It's a one-way
so
ticket.
so I leave number 5 to you. What's
Okay, I'm
number
going to throw
5
another
on our?
curveball at you. Ottawa again. And I'm going to say it's going to be the last Scally Cap Rat show that Tui and I
Okay,
came up to.
okay, that was a great time. I had a wonderful time that night.
Think that was just a fun night. And I think I want to leave the listener at the mercy of it just being, Cox Bar, the Bruisers, and then 3 Dropkick Murphy shows. So
Yeah. There's a lot of things we can't go into detail about that night, but um, that was a great show. I
yes.
forget who played with
Yes.
us. Pistols at Dawn and another
Um
band, but I think it was. I don't want to name the other
yeah.
band because there's a member of it that is not a good person. Uh, but the it's a good night when the only person sober enough to drive home doesn't have a driver's license.
Oh man, I forgot about that part.
Yes, because
I forgot all about that part. That
Sean
Tui
was
had to drive
Sean
home.
was sober at that time, and I thought he had a license.
He
So I was
was.
like, Sean, can you drive? And
I.
then
He asked me to buy my Subaru so often that I don't think it ever crossed my mind that he wouldn't have
right,
a license
right, yeah. So
because he was always saying, "Oh, dude, I'll buy your Subaru from you." Okay, like all right. So this guy must drive, but no,
exactly,
he does not.
he does now. I think.
But
I think he was
I
learning at the
believe he
time,
does. But
or getting his
at the
license
same
or
time,
something.
who knows?
Anyway,
And thankfully, it wasn't a standard car, so we lucked out on that. Because then I don't know if we would have gotten home that night.
no, we would not have. Okay, we're getting a little off track though. So that's our top 5 shows we've seen together. A little bit. Now you guys know what our friendship has been like and how we're lucky to be alive and not dead in a ditch somewhere or murdered in a bar by a skinhead from Gatineau. Uh,
Or at least you didn't like get on a ferry that sank that one time. But again, I digress.
so
All
yeah,
right.
we survived. We survived getting robbed. We survived bar fights. We survived sketchy border crossings and a whole bunch of other stuff that we haven't even mentioned to get to this point during a global pandemic. And we decided it was time to do a punk rock podcast. So that's how we got here. We don't know exactly what we're going to do with it. We know we're going to have fun. I think you can expect to see lots of guests and interviews. I think that's one thing we for sure want to do a lot of, and
Absolutely.
we have some fun stuff in the works. Maybe some in-depth
Yeah, we definitely
discussions.
have things lined up here.
Yeah, I don't want to. I don't
Hopefully.
want to say anything yet, just in case like they fall through. But we have some pretty cool guests
Oh, I
lined
don't
up
either.
for the first
There's
few
definitely a couple
episodes.
of things coming down the pipeline
Mhm.
that'll be pretty good. And I think the longer
Yeah.
or the more that we do this, we will find a stride where it'll,
Mhm.
we will be able to be we'll be good at this, people. We'll be good at
Yeah,
this.
we'll get into our groove and there'll be no looking back. But I like this line I wrote in the outline, so I want to
Exactly.
read it verbatim. So
I
I
bet it's the
said
one
like
that I was just about to read.
I said you can expect to see lots of guests and interviews and some in-depth discussion on all things punk rock, but like the genre, things are a little nebulous and we'll see where things take us. I love that word nebulous. Like it just like it's so evocative of like
That's
punk rock, right?
that's a very good word, and
Because like
you're so
punk
clearly a teacher coming off that
I actually
language.
I'll tell you, I stole that concept from Swid from Rages in the Night because he was in like a Facebook argument
Okay,
about like what punk rock was, and he was saying punk rock is nebulous, and I was like, oh man, that's so good, I got to use that.
all
I know
right.
I use it all the time. Uh,
Well,
so let's get
Swid's a
right down
very
to it.
intelligent guy.
Oh,
He
he
says a
is.
lot of
He's
things like that. I feel.
speaking of guests, we should ask him if he wants to come on. He would have some stories.
Oh, that'd be pretty cool.
Yeah.
I guarantee you he would.
So
So the purpose of this episode is
yes.
just for you to get to know us, really, and I think we're starting to accomplish that a little bit. We are diving right in here, and I think now's the time where if you need a little drink, you got to take a squirt. No, I can't do that. Jesus.
Yeah. People are not going to have any idea what the hell you're talking about. That was a reference to
But you
Dropkick
did.
Murphys live on St. Patrick's Day, and I'm the only person who's going to get that. Well, a few of our friends will get that. So I had a line here about the rules for this thing we're going to do. We're going to interview each other, and I thought like the rule for this interview segment could be we each take a turn asking a question, and we're allowed one follow up before switching. But I don't know if we should do that or if we should just go back and forth and let the conversation flow.
I think we'll see. We'll have to see where this takes us because I think that what we've come up with and what we're going to pose to one another can lead to some pretty
Mm-hmm.
both lengthy and
Girthy.
answers where it's pretty easy to go off on tangents. Yeah,
Oh,
for sure.
we don't even need help going off on tangents. So okay, I'll start the interview.
That's very fair. That's why ramble is the first word in the title of
Yes.
this podcast.
Ramble is the operative term here. So I'll start off our co-interview of each other. I thought I'd ask a rather big question. You can answer it as briefly as you want, take as much time as you need, but it's a two-parter. What was your introduction to punk rock? And what started you off on this journey that got us to this point? your punk rock journey?
Boy, so the brief of it is just going to be The Clash. That's it. My mom had a combat rock cassette buried somewhere, and I found that when I was very young, and found an old cassette player and wore it out pretty quickly. And that was combat rock is probably not the most quote unquote punk rock introduction to the Clash, but that's where it all began. And I remember I had a friend whose older brother. He was into a lot of the punk rock. He was like 6 or 7 years older than us, and from there I ended up with I think the first record I got from him, I want to say, was an Out Come the Wolves, and then a girl that I went to school with gave me Fresh Fruit for Rotting Vegetables right around the same time.
Nice.
And collectively, my mind was blown. And I remember like diving so deep into this and so quickly and like falling absolutely like head over heels in love with the music and like the messages they're trying to put across in the songs. And I think the one memory that really stands out to me is I remember my mom's mother, my grandmother, one day when I was maybe 11 or 12 years old. There was an issue of that terrible magazine, Alternative Press, and it had Rancid on the cover of it, and had an interview with Lars. And my grandmother bought it, and she brought it home, and she sat me down, and she was like, "Scott, do you really want to be like this?" And she opened up and like started showing me like the interview with Lars, because she didn't believe that Lars answered questions like very intelligently or whatever, and he was like very open about the fact that he has an 8th grade education or whatever. And she was like, "That's what you want to aspire to?" And I was just like, I remember sitting there and being like, he seems to love what he's doing. He's happy with what he's doing. So yeah, I'm pretty okay with that. And I remember both my grandmother and my mother being horrified with that. And growing up at the advent of the internet and everything, and file sharing becoming a thing, it was very easy to hop on LimeWire, or the program that I used the most was SoulSeek, where you could download full albums. And I would like go into somebody's files and I would find all sorts of stuff depending on how they had it, organized. And I would download like a whole folder at a time, and I'd end up with all sorts of weird stuff. You're like 13 years old and you're pulling, like all of a sudden you've got everything from like Combat 84 coming up on your computer, and you've got like some South American band you can't even say, and like the band that really sealed the deal, I think, when I got there was my favorite band out there, which is the Toy Dolls. And once I got there, I think I came totally full circle, because I had found like, I think a lot, there's a lot of the punk, or a lot of punk rock is very serious, but a lot of it, and I think the true essence of it when it really comes down to it, is it's all about like having fun. And if you take yourself too seriously, you're not going to be there. And I think the Toy Dolls are the epitome of that within the genre.
Yeah, man. So you got like the foundational punk rock like education, like right off the bat, with like the Clash and Dead Kennedys and all that. And like that's
and
if you're gonna get into punk, I feel like that's a pretty good way to do it.
it is not a bad way to do it. That's
Yeah.
for sure. That and and the other thing, like at the time, with the exception, I guess, of the Clash and the Dead Kennedys there, but like Rancid was a very active band, and from there getting into more of those like Hellcat Records bands, and like getting into all the bands that are active and all the bands that you're able to go see. That's when it really cements, I think, when you have the live experience.
Yeah, definitely.
But
that's awesome. So your turn now to ask me a question.
yeah, and I think I was going to start somewhere kind of similar. Obviously, I'm gonna kind of mold 2 questions into one here. Like musically, where were you at musically before you got into like punk music?
Before I got into punk music, I was definitely into classic rock. Like Kiss was my first favorite band. I loved Kiss. I was into like AC/DC, Led Zeppelin, Uh, Metallica's not really classic rock, but I was into Metallica,
Now they're
Iron
probably on
Maiden.
the radio stations.
Yeah, yeah, oh, definitely. So I was into like kind of like classic rock, like Sabbath, so like a bit of metal. Um, I'm trying to think. Going back further, I remember getting Spice World on cassette for a birthday gift when I was like 5 or 6.
Nice. I
But
remember
yeah,
the
like
first one I got being Abbey Road by the Beatles
that's a
when I
lot
was like
better.
6.
So yeah, so like lots of classic rock. I had like a little rap phase that didn't last very long, thankfully, and it was mostly just like Eminem and Lil Bow Wow. Uh,
Little Bow Wow. All right.
yeah, I had a Lil Bow Wow CD, and I love that Like Mike movie where he gets the shoes that makes him like Mike. So yeah, that's what I was.
Okay.
That's where I was at before I found punk rock.
Well, thank God. No, but I mean, I think you already had that foundation in heavier music when you got there, so that made it very
Mhm.
easy for you.
I mean, the second part of your
And I
question
guess
says, "How
the
did you
second,
find it?" So, do you want me to talk about how I
yeah,
found punk rock?
yeah,
Sorry, I'm
let's do
stepping on
that.
your lines. I'm stepping on
Yeah,
your
let's
lines.
let's do that.
Okay.
That's
Well,
totally fine. Let's do it.
you might already know this story because I've told it before, but so it's like grade 7 or 8. I'm into lots of classic rock, but I started playing the Tony Hawk Pro Skater games, or I had been playing the Tony Hawk Pro Skater games, but not really paying attention to the soundtracks. The Tony Hawk Pro Skater 4, I started paying attention to the soundtrack a little more. I'm like, oh, I like these bands. But then Tony Hawk Underground came out, and I was like 13 or 14 when it came out, I think. I'd have to check that. But that's when I started paying attention to the names of the bands on these songs. And like the one that really stuck out to me was Time to Go by Dropkick Murphys. Because I was like, oh, this is crazy. It's got like accordion, but it's like punk rock. This is kind of cool. Um,
It's
so
about
I went
hockey.
online. Yeah, it's about
Like,
hockey. I'm like, yeah, man, this is kind of cool. So I went on LimeWire and I downloaded some Dropkick Murphy songs. The first ones I got was a real weird mix. It was like Rocky Road to Dublin, John Law, uh, another Sing Loud, Sing Proud song, I think, and then Drink and Fight, which is not a Dropkick Murphy song. And I soon figured that out. Took me a little bit,
of course.
but I soon I figured out that Drink and Fight was not a Dropkick Murphy song. And then I'm just trying to remember the chronology of this. So I started to get into more punk rock, and like MySpace was big at the time. So I started looking at the Dropkick Murphys' top friends, and it was like Agnostic Front, Bouncing Souls, Blood for Blood, stuff like that. So I started looking at those bands a little bit, but then I have a weird mind. I don't know why I work this way. I was like, oh, if I'm gonna get into punk rock, I've been downloading all these songs from all these different bands. Um, I should really like go back to the start and start at the beginning. So I took some birthday money, I think, went to it was called Music World. It doesn't exist anymore. It was a music shop similar to like Virgin Records or whatever. And
Okay.
I, I I bought a Ramones album and I bought a Sex Pistols album, but I didn't buy like this Ramones self-titled, and I didn't buy Nevermind the Bollocks. I bought Ramones Greatest Hits Live, and I bought Sex Pistols Live and Raw or something like that, or like some weird some
Oh boy.
live recording of the Sex Pistols. So those are the two those are the two albums I ever bought with my own money. Those are the first two albums I ever bought with my own money. And so I really got into
Oh man.
Ramones, not so much the Sex Pistols. I would get into Sex Pistols a bit more later, but then that's how my journey really started, and I started getting into punk rock. Like Dropkick Murphys and the Ramones were two of the big ones. Oh, one thing I forgot to mention to back up. The reason I started paying more attention to those punk bands on the Tony Hawk games was probably Sum 41. I love the All Killer No Filler album. Like Fat Lip was like my favorite song ever. Like so Sum 41 was probably the band that kind of like pushed me in that punk rock direction. And then Dropkick Murphys is the band that made me take that like dive in. If you know what I mean. Like
I think that definitely makes sense as like the bridge because Sum 41 was had so much of that like metal influence
mhm,
in them,
yeah.
obviously. Uh, that like your Sabbath, your heavier AC/DC stuff like that. Like that's a nice bridge to like a like a way more of a punk influence, but that heavy is still there.
Yeah. Yeah. So like,
So I think that makes a
and
lot
like,
of sense. But sorry,
I was gonna
after
say
you, sir.
like, I kind of had like a weird journey because like I was kind of getting all these, I was trying all these like different things at once, and like, I really like the Celtic stuff that Dropkick was doing, so that got me into flogging Molly, and those are like Dropkick and flogging Molly for a long time are like my two favorite bands. Dropkick's still my number one band, I would say, but yeah, and then I met some kids from high school who were into punk too, and they were already going to shows and stuff. So I decided I was gonna start trying to go to shows with them. So like the first show I ever went to actually turned out to be Flogging Molly and the Street Dogs in Montreal. And like I got my parents to take me, and I went with my brother. But then the first ever when I got and then I started going after that I started going to like local shows with my friends. So the first like smaller local show I ever went to was the Subhumans UK, which was awesome. I still love that band. And then
That's a fun one. Absolutely.
then I saw Bouncing Souls like right after that. Uh and then I saw Crumb Bums and Lower Class Brats like a couple months later. So those are like my three first shows. So like that I think those shows kind of
Was that like
like
2006?
it's 2006 or 2007. I think Flogging Molly
Trying
was
to
end
think
of
because I remember seeing a
2006
lot.
or started 2007. Yeah, I didn't like it took me a couple years before I really started like going to shows and like getting more into the punk scene. Like at first it was mostly just listening to like Dropkick and Flogging Molly and then some Ramones and some Sex Pistols, and then once I found most friends at high school, it's when I
Right.
really dived into the scene.
Absolutely.
So yeah.
Hmm. I believe.
So is it my turn to
I
ask a
believe it's your
question?
turn again, sir. I think so.
Ooh, this is a very introspective one. Very deep. What has your wait, no, that's yours. Never mind. I know I had a deep one in here. Yeah, here's my deep one. It's an easy one. What is punk to you? Doesn't have to be a definition, but like rather what it means to you. Like what's yeah, what does punk mean to you?
Oh, Webster's dictionary defines. I mean, no, I'm just kidding here. But I don't know. I think really when it comes down to it, it's just just doing your own thing and not really worrying about it too much. I think it's everybody gets the image, or at least outside of the world of it, and I think outside of the subculture, everybody gets the middle finger in the air, anarchy, fuck you,
Mhm.
studs, braces, whatever the hell else. And I don't know. Sure, that's a part of it. Whatever, it is what it is. But I don't know. I think more than anything, it just comes down to the individuality of it, and therefore, I kind of believe it's kind of whatever you want it to be.
Mhm.
Um, and for me, it's it's something in my life. Like the music played a big part in my life. It got me to it got most of the friendships that I carry over to this day. They're not people from school. They're not people from anywhere else. They're people that I've either met at shows or met weirdly. Because this wasn't even a thing 25 years ago. Obviously, like meeting through the internet,
Mhm.
like things that earlier generations didn't have an option to do. But I think that's really what it is more than anything else. I think in the end it becomes, I don't know, just kind of like becomes your family in a way. Um,
Definitely, dude.
I guess that's kind of off track there a little bit, but I
No,
think
I
it's
think
more the individuality of it.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's kind of where I was expecting you to go with it. Like one thing for me, I always make the joke like I don't know what punk is, but like I'll know it when I see it. It's like kind of one of those things that's like hard to define. And like I feel like a lot of people, even within the scene, kind of make the mistake of thinking, "Oh, punk is just me doing whatever I want and like fuck everybody else." But I think it's like a bit more complicated than that. It's more about like doing what, being true to yourself in the face of the status quo, and like no matter what, like the so-called normal society or whatever would say, or like right, like what's that? There's a like Far From Finish line. I'd be a shitty punk if I like cared what other people said about me or
Oh
something.
yeah.
I can't remember.
What is it? It's what kind of punk would I be if I took shit for being me? From
Yeah, yeah.
Roses and
So
Razor Blades. That's what you're looking for.
yes, yes, that's what I was looking for. I was listening to that today, but yeah. So I just think like, yeah, it's about being yourself, but I think it's more like it's not just about being yourself because like the frat guy who goes out and like roofies a girl and is like a racist misogynist, he's just being himself and doing what he wants. Like, but he's not punk rock. But like, it's complicated, right?
Right.
But there is that
Absolutely.
aspect of it where like it's being true to yourself, but like living your truth, even though like people might look down on you, like for just for like your story about what your grandma and your mom did with the magazine. Like, do you really want to be like Lars
Right.
Fredrickson? And like, but that spoke to you. You're like, yes, I
Right.
do. Oh, I do want to be like Lars Fredrickson. So yeah, it's like going back to that thing. It's nebulous, right? And like, it's hard to define. And but like, it's a lot easier to come up with like a personal definition than it is to like something to define the whole genre.
Absolutely, and it goes so far beyond the music. There's such a subculture attached to it, um,
Yes.
and I there's certainly like when you put yourself at a punk show, there's you know there's all different types of people there. There always are, but like you. I'm trying to think of the right way to say this here. Um, there's just this like weird. I think like being at a Cox Bar show pretty much puts it together the best because they're the band that basically I think does it the best because you're at one of their shows and there's every subculture within the punk rock, excuse me, within the punk rock, dictionary, rule book, whatever you want to. Everybody's there, and everybody's singing along. It's like there's not a quiet person in the house at one of their shows, it's
Yeah.
like a big family, I guess. I don't know. There's
Yeah.
like
It's
a
like a
camaraderie there,
yeah. Exactly. It's like a camaraderie. It's like a communal
and I think
experience.
right. And I think going into that, like you know, you learn a lot through that, and so with that, I kind of want to follow up with what has your experience with punk music like taught you, what or the culture, or however you want to look at it right now.
Oh boy, what has it taught me? Uh, Man, that is a big question. I feel like it's taught me a lot. Not all of it good. But um I think getting into punk rock really changed my perspective on the world. I was probably in some ways a more judgmental person before getting into punk rock, and in some ways I was also uh don't know how to phrase it really, but like I guess I don't know how to. I'm trying. I don't even know what I'm trying to get at. But it definitely changed my perspective on the world. It opened me up to a whole slew of new perspectives. Like I'm a kid. I grew up in the who grew up in the country in like a very rural setting, and always kind of felt out of place. Like I never felt like I really belonged anywhere. But it kind of took punk rock to like get me out of, or to like expose me to other people and other views of the world that I was kind of closed off to before, I guess, and like uh, broaden my horizons politically and socially. Because like it's hard. It's easy to be hard on yourself, especially when you're going back to when you're like 12, 13, 14 years old. But like I didn't have a good attitude about a lot of things at that time, and I like towards like people who were different. And I think a lot of it was like self-loathing. Like I wanted to fit in, so I thought if I like hated on people who didn't fit in, I would start to fit in. So like
Right.
that, but punk is what made me really finally just be like, I need to accept myself for who I am. I'm a weird kind of outcast loner kid, and that's fine because there's dozens, hundreds, thousands of us all over the world, and they all started bands. So like, you know what? I don't need to keep trying to do this thing where like I fit in with people who I don't really like. I think punk like finally gave me the courage to be myself, for better or worse.
I think that's totally reasonable, especially for both of us. Like, because I know we grew up in a similar way, in the sense that both of us were very, we played a lot of hockey growing up, and that doesn't necessarily expose you to the cream of the crop of humanity. I feel like
Yes. And
always.
family influences and like just like the people you're around all the time might not necessarily have the most enlightened view of LGBT
Absolutely.
people or people of color. So it just becomes, yeah, like I don't think I was ever like, I'm not saying I was ever like super homophobic or racist in any way. I never was. I'm just saying that like there's those baked in attitudes of like that come along with like growing up in like an insulated community where like you don't realize you kind of have harbored these prejudices like of no fault of your own, just like through the environment you grew up in. Like one example, I would always make those stupid jokes about like, oh, I don't care if people are gay as long as they don't hit on me. Like that's something I said all the time when I was like
Right, right,
13.
right,
And I thought I was being super enlightened. And looking back now, it's like you're just an idiot. Like, but
right,
I think punk, like in its
right.
vast array of like different political views and different social causes, like it made me a better person in that regard. And it also at the same time realized I'm just kind of leeching onto the attitudes of people around me in order to try and fit in with them. And that's not what I should be doing. I should just be
Right.
myself.
It's better to step away and
Hmm.
yeah, absolutely. It's better to step out of the way and decide that, I need to form my own opinions and have my own views on things, because
Yes.
that's how you get trapped and stuck somewhere you don't need to be.
Yeah. Okay.
But I
So I'm
believe
looking
we're
at my
going back to you,
questions
good sir.
and I kind of want to skip a couple because we kind of already went over them. Like we already kind of
Okay.
like we kind of already did the like if you could relive any show thing when we did like our top 5 uh
Yep.
shows we've been to together. So I feel like retreading that ground might be not worth the time. I don't know.
Yeah.
This is a quick one though. I can just ask you like what's the last like kind of sad considering the pandemic and the fact that shows haven't happened for a long time, but what was the last show you actually got to attend before the shutdown?
Well, funnily enough, it was a show you were at with me. It's going to be the Bruisers in Providence
Oh wow.
when it was me, you, and DJ, and
Chris and
Alex was
Alex.
there, and Chris was there. Yeah, and I got in a car accident driving to Providence, and we went to the casino, and all
Yep.
sorts of stuff that weekend yet again. And
That was a day.
but yeah, that was a day for sure. Kids, you shouldn't call the cops to the scene of an accident when your license is suspended. Just for the
and,
record, any
and for
listeners
the
out there,
record,
I advise against that.
you didn't do that. The person who was involved in the collision with us did that.
Yeah, yeah. The person whose license was suspended called the police, and
And
we
I
got to
just
leave pretty quickly
yeah.
and go eat hot dogs next to Rob Lind. But they had to stay at the scene of the accident for God knows how long.
uh I remember making the joke because like I stopped drinking. I'm not drinking anymore. DJ's not drinking. You were sober that night. Like I think we were all sober and we still managed to somehow get into some ridiculous bullshit at a
Right.
show. So that's a
So
good last
something
show to
had
go
to
to,
happen.
right?
I just feel like
Like that night
it's
was
par
that's
for
a
the
story.
course.
That's a whole night. There's a whole story unto itself. So that's a good night to have as your last
I
show,
feel
I
like they
guess.
all are in the end. I feel like almost every time we get together, whatever happens could be a pretty good story.
Yeah, my last show was Anti-Flag and Grade 2 at a place called
I
the
was
27 Club in Ottawa. And I didn't even
I
stay
was
for
supposed to
Anti-Flag.
see that tour.
Oh yeah, because yeah, that was the only
Understandable.
show of that
They're a
tour
great
that actually
live band.
happened. Yeah, like I I made a huge mistake because if I had have known I wasn't gonna be able to go to a show for like almost 2 years, I would have stayed for Anti-Flag. But I was recovering from an illness and I was
Right.
tired and I was like, I'm gonna go home and sleep. I really just wanted to see Grade 2. So I saw grade 2 and I was like, okay, that's it. I'm going home to bed. I got to be up for work tomorrow. And then the next day, their whole tour was canceled. Like everything shut down all of a sudden. Like it was just like, oh damn. And that was the only show on that
Yeah,
tour
the
they played.
first show.
So like
Yeah, the first
Anti-Flag.
show that got canceled here was
Yeah.
that tour.
So like I assume, do those guys even live in Pittsburgh anymore, or do they live in like California? Where do they live?
Who knows, man? Who knows? Because like I feel like musicians end up all over the place. Like Jake Burns lives in Chicago.
Yeah. So those Anti-Flag guys, they drove up from wherever, Pittsburgh, California, to Ottawa. The grade 2 guys flew from the Isle of Wight to Ottawa to start this big tour that never
They
happened.
definitely
They
had
played
it a
one
little
show.
harder.
So they played one show, and then the whole tour got canceled because of the pandemic.
Yeah, that weekend here we were supposed to have 3 shows that I was going to go to, and all 3 of them got canceled. So, hopefully back on the other end there. Hope maybe we'll get them back on the other end of this, but who knows? But I think if you could give somebody like with zero foundation in punk rock and like just they'd had no prior interest, no prior exposure, if you could put 3 records in front of them, what 3 records would you choose to do?
3 records to get somebody into punk rock. 3.
Yeah.
3. I'm just buying
3.
time. Okay. My number 1, I had to think about for a second because I was going back and forth. Ramones' Self-Titled. I was thinking Rocket to Russia because I think it's the better album, but I chose Self-Titled simply for the fact that those first chords, the Blitzkrieg Bop, can be life-changing. And this, like, the power... I don't know anymore, though, because that song's all over the place. No, I'm still going with the Ramones Self-Titled, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, so number 1, Ramones Self-Titled. Or... Yeah, okay, yeah. Number 1, Ramones Self-Titled, In the Bank. Number 2, don't even have to think about it, Shock Troops, Coxbar. That's going in there. This is already a bad list because like I'm already thinking about like 50 other albums that could go in here.
I know that's why 3 is a tough number, but that's specifically why I went with 3.
Number 3, Clash Self-Titled, I think.
I think that's a reasonable choice as well.
I'm sticking with it because it's like how do you choose? 5 would have been a lot more manageable.
I agree.
And even that would have been harder.
We have approximately 1 crossover album, and it's Shock Troops.
Okay, yeah, give me your 3 then. Shock Troops. What are the other 2?
Shock Troops. Stiff Little Fingers, Nobody's Heroes. 100%. And then my third one, I think I'd have to go like a little more recent. I'd have to, give it a little bit of recency bias here, and jump up. Oh God, I don't know. See, now I'm in trouble. I don't know. Shock Troops, Nobody's Heroes, and I feel like I'd go the total other direction, and I'd give somebody who had no idea what was going on. I would give them Anti-Nowhere League, We Are the League.
Damn, that's the one out of left field. Man, yes. So many albums. Like,
but I think that was it.
Oh, damn it. Sorry. Yeah, this would have another one that would have been great to put on there. But yeah, like...
Which one?
Going through my head. Well, there's so many going through my head. Like, the one that just popped into my head that I should have said, and now I'm even second guessing that, is Out of Step by Minor Threat. Just to get, like, the hardcore in there.
Yeah, see... complete discography. I remember getting that CD
complete discography,
13, and that just...
Or like Fresh Fruit for Rotten Vegetables. Like London Calling. You could put like the first 3 Ramones albums, like even Nevermind the Bollocks. Like as much as I don't really enjoy the Sex Pistols as much as I used to, that's still a foundational album. What about Damn Damn Damn?
Like they... Oh Jesus! All right,
Machine Gun Etiquette.
Damn's another good one.
There's just so many.
Right, I could have said it just as easily. Said Inflammable Material.
Right. Yeah. Like I was even thinking Do or Die for like classic '90s like street punk.
I almost said "Do
There's
or
just
Die," and I also almost said I also almost said "That's right, don't tread on me."
ooh. So lots of possibilities. If you're out there, never listened to punk rock before, just take that like clip there and just go listen to all those albums.
What the hell are you doing here? No,
Yeah.
I'm just
Or yeah. Okay.
but if you need something to listen to, I think those are all great places to start.
Okay, this one's a bit easier because it's personal preference, semi-related. So to
Okay.
give the people an idea of your taste and what sort of thing you're into, first give me your top 5 bands, and then give me your top 5 favorite albums.
5 bands, very easy here. We're gonna go Toy Dolls, Stiff Little Fingers, Coxbar. See, and the last two is where it gets very tricky
Oh,
for me, and I think the last two kind of change really frequently. But I think just for the longevity of how they've been there for me always, I have to put Dropkick there, and I think my fifth one over the last like 3 or 4 years, I think the band I've listened to more than any other is the Suicide Machines.
ooh, interesting. That's a band I've never really gotten into a lot. Can I just say though that I'm shocked that the 737, the Mighty Mighty Boss Zones, didn't make that list?
I find myself having grown pretty distant from the Boss Tones at this point in my life.
Interesting.
Like I've listened to them actually more in the last month than I think I have in the last like 2 or 3 years.
Well, like,
They've definitely started making a little bit of a regular appearance in my rotation because I bought an original pressing of Devil's Night Out at a record shop here not that long
ooh,
ago, and
that's a nice. That's a nice.
I've had that
purchase.
on quite a bit.
Okay,
But
so
as
you
far
did
as
your.
albums go,
Yeah.
um, well, I think I'd have a really tough time like narrowing this for. Actually, no, I'm not. I'm going to do this. Kings of Nothing fight songs.
Great
They're
album.
I don't know if that's not number one, but that record is just they are so unique and so frenetic, and they're just everywhere, and the energy is like nothing else. R.I.P. Tor, uh, the piece of shit guitarist who's in jail or whatever. Fuck
I
you,
did not
but
know that.
still, yeah, he had like child porn or something.
Oh God, so many winners in the
But
punk scene these days.
but seriously, that album is just unbelievable. Um, I think I for Do or Die really did it for me. Still does do it for me. So I think I have to have that there. Shock Troops to carry over from my 3 albums. Um, Destruction by Definition by the Suicide Machines, and I think I'm kind of probably somewhere between Fuck the 90s, Here's Our Noise,
Ooh, yes,
and
that's a good one.
that's definitely there for me from Oxymoron. And I think I guess that's 5, so I'll stop myself there.
That was 5. It's a pretty good list. I
think
kind of
so.
want to give you mine now, though, even though that's not how this is supposed to work.
Let's do it. Let's hear it.
Okay,
That's okay.
so
We can change it up. We make the rules here.
it's true. I'm gonna go with my gut, and I'm gonna try to stick to punk because if I start bringing in other and punk related genres, if I start bringing in other stuff, it's gonna get messy. Like honestly, with the amount of times I've listened to it since the pandemic started, I could put "Live at the Fillmore East" by the Allman Brothers in my top 5 if I really wanted to. But I'll start with
Whoa.
top 5 bands.
Left.
Yeah, I've been like on a heavy southern rock like binge since the pandemic started. Like ZZ Top, Allman Brothers, Leonard Skinner, like just like the band, and I have no idea why, but I've just been like super on a heavy deep dive into that stuff. But that's not what we're here for.
All
We're here for
right.
punk rock. So my top 5 bands, gonna go with my gut. Gonna start with the 3Ds, the holy trinity of the mid '90s Boston punk scene: Dropkick, Murphys, Darkbuster, and Ducky Boys. I have to put them in there.
Wow.
Those are 3 of my.
All 3 in the 5 favorites.
Oh
All
yeah,
right.
100%, 100%. To me, Darkbuster is on the same level of the Ramones for that like uncouth, snot-nosed, idiotic but genius lyric writing. Like especially the first album. So I have to have them in there. And
22 songs. Yeah.
speaking of the Ramones, they're my number 4. This is where it gets tricky. There's a lot of bands that could be in the number 5.
Well, what are we thinking here? What direction are we going to go?
So many bands. I'm thinking so many bands. I think I'm gonna go on time spent listening, and say Minor Threat.
Okay.
I think yes. That's right now. That could change tomorrow.
I think that. Yep.
Because I'm thinking it could be Cockspire. It should be Cockspire. I don't know. Switch Cockspire and Minor Threat any day of the week and put them in there.
Very different sounds, but very awesome sounds for sure.
So, if those are my 5 bands, my 5 albums: Do or Die by Dropkick Murphys, Rocket to Russia by the Ramones, trying to think. I guess I could put. I'm gonna throw something like out of like left field. Nah, I don't know if I'd put that in my top 5 though. This is hard, man. Like you don't realize how hard it is until you actually have to sit down and do it. Looking at my records. Okay, I'm gonna put All Killer No Filler in there just because if we're going by time listened, I still spend a lot of time listening to All Killer No Filler. Shock Troops. Did I say Shock Troops yet? No.
I don't. No, you did not. I mean, we've both said Shock Troops quite a bit, so.
So Shock Troops is 4. Number 5, I'm gonna go with. Oh boy, it's when you get to the 5th spot and you're like, "There's only one left. What do I choose? Who do I leave out?"
Right.
It's such a good album, and honestly, I slept on this band for so long until recently. It's a crime, but this album has quickly become one of my favorite albums, and that's Damn Damn Damned. Like I slept on the Damned for so long.
All right.
And like I just like right now at least it's in my top 5. So there. That's my top 5
I mean, just
bands.
the way that album kicks off, you get that bass line getting into neat, and and you're going.
I thought about Machine Gun Etiquette for a second, but I think Damn Damn Damned is I listen to more. So okay. So is it my turn to ask you a question then? We both done our top 5 albums.
I believe so. Yes.
Oh wait, no, that was my question to you. So it's your turn to ask me a question.
Oh geez. All right. Well, I think I'm going to skip ahead a little bit here, and I'm, given the state of the world around us, we obviously COVID, we're in the middle of a pandemic. None of us have done, we've not been to shows. We've not really done much in the last year. And the world around us, obviously, where I'm at, we've had a little bit of a political turmoil, to put it mildly, and there's things happening all over the world right now. And I just want your kind of opinion on this. Do you think that coming out on the other end of this, like, do you think it's going to lead us to something of like a punk renaissance, if you will? I think in the last few years, like a lot of, I don't want to say things have gotten stale, because there's certainly absolutely fantastic and absolutely phenomenal bands out there that are just doing great things. But I think it's on a very it's on a very like small time level. You're not seeing any bands just like not that it's about getting catapulted into stardom or anything, but like I think there are certainly a couple bands that where the levee could break, if you will, and the gates could come crashing or open up, and people could start more people could start getting interested in this music again. So like kind of in conjunction with that punk renaissance bit, who are some of the newer bands that you find yourself spending a lot of time with and you think should be on everybody's radar?
Okay. For the first part, the punk renaissance, I'm going to be blunt and say no. I don't think there's going to be a punk renaissance, at least in any meaningful way. it didn't happen with Bush. People tried, but like it's just whatever comes next, whatever protest like rebel like countercultural wave comes next, I think it'll be influenced by punk. But I don't think punk itself is ever going to capture like the zeitgeist of the counterculture the way it did in the late 70s and early 80s, and even the way it sort of did again in the 90s with like Rancid and Offspring and all that. And I
Yeah,
just
I would even say, yeah, for sure, the '90s.
yeah, like I don't see like I think there's always going to be punk and there's always going to be good bands making punk music. I just don't think it's going to be ever. I hope I'm wrong, but I just don't think it's ever going to be like it was before. Like I don't think there's going to be another renaissance. I'm
Right,
sorry.
which were all before our time. So it's like
Yeah, yeah. Is that it's kind of
we exist
sad
in this world with
like there are like there is stuff going on now that is punk influence, but I just don't like I just one thing that's so important to punk and like the way punk took off was like its accessibility. And I just don't know if punk's accessible to a lot of kids these days, like it used to be. Like I don't I like coming from my like short experience as like a middle school teacher. Like everything's so homogenized and kids are all getting the same stuff through social media. Like there's so much opportunity for them to discover stuff, but they don't really go out and look for it. They just listen to like whatever is trending basically. So like whatever gets viral and gets trending or is popular, that's what they gravitate to. And that's what the way it's always been for the most part. But like kids like us when we were in high school, we would like search out music, but that's only one part of it. Like we liked it, but then we had shows we could go to. We could go see a band on a matinee on a weekend, or we could go to an all ages show. But like all ages shows like barely ever happen anymore. There's no spaces in at least in Ottawa and a lot of other cities for the all ages show to bring in kids to get them interested in punk. Like so that accessibility where like a kid can go and listen, go catch a show doesn't really exist anymore. Like you can't go to a Legion and see a show on a Saturday night or something, or like a Saturday
it's
afternoon.
very true.
And I think that's just there's all these different uh, facets of like what you need to like really capture like a large portion of younger kids. And another thing that doesn't really get talked about that I've seen other people talk about that know way more about it than me is like the issue of all these big media companies like iHeartRadio buying up all the radio stations. So they're all playing the same things. And iHeartRadio is deciding what everybody's listening to basically. There's no like DJs don't really curate their playlists themselves anymore. They get it from a directive up top. Like this is what we're playing. You talk for a few seconds here.
Right.
So like shows like
Right, and you're gonna play this song again.
yeah. So stuff like oh my god, I'm blanking on his name. Roddy Bingenheimer, like he had his show and he broke a ton of bands. Like he played Nirvana first. He played he played the Runaways first. He played all these bands on his radio show back in LA in the day. But like there's and the guy for the BBC, he still does that. What's his name? Oh my god. There's a guy for the BBC who does
Jesus.
he does that, but he has the pull to do that. Most people don't have the pull to be doing that. So that's why you get like the same radio station.
Right.
These radio stations in all these different cities all playing the exact same playlist because like the corporate takeover of radio.
Oh, it's crazy. Like at one of the restaurants I used to work at, you know, we'd kind of just cycle through like 3 radio stations kind of throughout the day, and it was the same 25 songs all freaking day long. And if I never heard an Ariana Grande song again, I'd be quite all right. You know, I'd survive pretty well.
Yeah, like the place I used to work,
but I think
it had like a satellite radio station that was like specifically for retail. It was like this is our retail like satellite radio station, and it just played like top whatever hits over and over.
You know, just Hootie and the Blowfish all day long.
But yeah, I think it's also a weird side note to this. Is like I'm super into guitars and guitar building and stuff, and apparently like guitar sales have never been better. But I'm just like, where's all the good guitar music?
Huh. Right. It's interesting. I mean, it makes sense because people have certainly had the time in the last year to jump onto the, so picking up something new.
Maybe this is gonna.
I mean, like that's what.
Yeah, maybe this will lead to all the people who are buying guitars right now. They might never do anything with them, but maybe their kids are gonna like pick up that guitar one day and just start going to town on it, and like that'll, you know, lead to something. But yeah,
Stick
so
stick
I'm
it to
done.
the man.
I don't want to be
You know?
negative and like stay on this train of thought because there are a lot of good bands and newer bands out there
Right.
that should be on everybody's radar.
So who are some of your favorites?
Uh, some bands that I've discovered recently, or not so recently, but like in the last few years, that I really love. I love the Chats from Australia. They're hilarious. Their songs like Pub Feed and Smoko are so funny. Like if you're into like the toy dolls and that kind of like flip the nose or whatever, like kind of like F you, like we're gonna have fun thing. They're a really fun band to check out, and they're very like Ramones influenced, very garagey. Uh, Another band who I just recently discovered, totally different sound sonically, but they're called Slant, and they're from Seoul, South Korea, and they're like super aggro 80s hardcore style. Like their whole demo is like 6 minutes and 40 seconds long, and it's like it's really great. So those two for sure. Uh, in our kind of genre, this like genres we operate in most, like street punk stuff, you know them, but like Legion 76 are one of like my favorite current bands going, even though they haven't really done a lot like recently. That's because they're doing other things, but like the guys are opening a
I
brewery,
mean, they've done a
having vape.
lot. They just haven't
They're
been
doing
doing
things, just
music.
not musically. Yeah. So like they're one of my, they're probably my favorite recent like oi band. Pup, the band Pup from Toronto, they're amazing. They're doing
Yeah.
great things and they're blowing up. Off of Their Heads, the new Off of Their Heads album is great.
Ryan is just such a good songwriter, I feel like, and
Yes,
he's able to capture just about everything that I feel on a day-to-day basis,
yes, exactly.
and put
Uh,
put it out there, which says a lot about how I think and feel. But
yeah.
I'm okay with that because he does it in a very eloquent way. I feel like.
hmm Yeah, and I feel like slit my wrist. I just listen to Off with Their Heads and be like, I'm not alone.
Well, that's like that was like the Lucero joke that DJ made that one year.
Yes, yeah, yeah.
When we saw them a bunch. Somebody asked what Lucero was, and DJ goes, "Well, if you want to sit in a dark room and kill yourself,
Well, drink. What do you say? Like drink whiskey, you kill yourself or something, like commit
yeah,
suicide
drink
or
a
something
bottle
like
of
that.
whiskey." Yeah.
Yeah. Um, I just thought of another band, and they totally just left my brain. Uh,
You're having a brain failure.
yeah. There's a band from Montreal I really love called Boyd's. They're on Stomp Records. They're great. If it's kind of like it's like punk rock, like little poppy, a little bit indie influence and indie rock influence. They're great. I'm trying to think of other bands I've listened to or bought albums from recently. There's a lot of good stuff out there. It's just like you gotta dig for it.
There is
Um,
absolutely.
Stolen
I feel like
Wheelchairs. That's what I was thinking
I'm
of.
at. Oh, that
They're
record is
great.
absolutely awesome.
Yes.
I got that as part of a record of the month club I'm in. With somebody who hopefully we'll have on the show pretty soon here.
Yeah.
And that's Oscar from Far From Finished with his kids singing. And that record, when that came in the mail and I put that on for the first time, I just holy shit, this is like one of the best things I've heard in a minute.
Yes.
Probably since I picked up the Vis Verre record that came out last year.
That is a great record too. You can put them in there. Our friend Chris Arias, he jived me or hit me. I don't know. He told me about a band called Live by the Sword that are very good. They're like street
Oh, dude,
punky,
they
but
are awesome.
very Templars influenced. Another Unspoken band influenced. But yeah, they're very good. I don't know if they're how new they are, but okay.
They've
that
been
it for
around
the
for a couple of
interviews?
years, I think. But
Yeah. Is that it for interview
I
times?
I think I think that was the last question that we had written down there together.
It was. Okay, so
And I think that
brings us to a segment. I don't know if it's
breaking
going to be a regular
news.
thing. Yes, a news segment, a punk news, not .org, just a punk
.org.
news segment. Like I said, I don't know if this is going to be a regular thing, but a bunch of news dropped this week Most of it is related to the Celtic punk genre, given that March is right around the corner. And I just want to put a disclaimer up. We're not a Celtic punk podcast. We're going to talk about Celtic punk a lot just because Scott and I are friends because of Dropkick Murphys, and also just because of the timing. Our new episode, like, we're starting this in March. So there's going to be a lot of Celtic punk content in these first few episodes, I think. But we're not strictly a Celtic punk podcast. I just want to put that out there because I know that Celtic punk isn't everybody's tea. So we're doing other stuff too. But
Absolutely, there'd be
all
plenty
this
of other
news
things featured here for sure.
yeah, so I'll read through the news items, Scott, and then I'll get your wonderful commentary as we go. How about that? So I'll give you the
All right.
news, and we'll come up with some witty banter as we go. So first news. This could pertain to a later episode. There is a new Peelers album coming out March 12th on Stomp Records. So the Peelers are a Celtic punk band originally from Glengarry County, down the road from me. They are now situated in Montreal. Their new record is coming out March 12th, and I totally just blanked on the name because I'm terrible at this. But they have a new single called Prize Fight out right now, and it is awesome. I give it my full endorsement. So I'm really interested in seeing or listening to the whole album. I've listened to the Peelers for a long time. I first encountered them on the Shite and Onions Volume 2 compilation, I think. They did the song Plastic Patty. This is my introduction. And in the time since then, I've come to know Dave personally, and he's a very nice guy, good friend. So go out and check out the new Peelers album, March 12th. I know, Scott, you aren't as familiar with them
I
as
had
I
never
am.
sat down with them. Yeah, I had never sat down with them until this morning, if I'm being completely honest. And I gave that the first thing I heard was that new single Prize Fight, and I definitely enjoyed it. I think it's very. They do a really nice job with it. I think it sounds awesome. I feel like it's definitely a little bit. It's more of a punk song than a Celtic song. The Celtic is still there for sure.
Yeah, I think there's
I'm
like a
curious
fiddle
to see
buried in
what.
the mix, but oh, sorry, I didn't mean to speak over you. But there is a fiddle buried in the mix, but it's very punky.
Yeah, and I was definitely into that. I didn't really know what to expect when I listened to them. I genuinely, like, when I first turned them on, did not even, when I went to listen to their most recent album prior to that, of which I'm forgetting the title right now, but I listened to
Palace
the
of
whole
the
thing this
Fiend.
afternoon. I listened to the whole thing this afternoon while I was walking my dogs, and after that song Prize Fight, I didn't expect everything to be so Celtic. And then I looked back at like their prior work, and I was like, oh, okay, like they do every traditional Irish song in the books, and that's cool. It's cool to hear different bands' takes on that. So I'm curious to see what the rest of it sounds like. I'm definitely going to be giving them some more time coming up here.
Yeah, I think this is definitely like the punkest song they've ever put out. They've definitely been on like a trajectory, like getting a bit harder with every release. I think the album with them I'm most familiar is like Liquordale, which came out in 2009, I think. But yeah, I'm excited to hear the rest of that album. Stomp Records always puts out quality stuff, so and knowing them personally, I just know it's going to be an awesome album. I actually, not to brag, but I might have an advanced copy I'm going to listen to later tonight.
Oh, listen to this guy, big shot over here.
Okay, so that's the first news item. Second news item. The Real Mackenzies have announced that they are doing a live stream on Saturday, March 13th at 7 Eastern, 4 Pacific. Also presented by Stomp Records and something called Big Bill. I don't know what Big Bill is, but it is coming live from the legendary Rickshaw Theater in Vancouver, British Columbia. There was no URL given. I assume it's going to be on their Facebook page or like their YouTube. Just search up Real Mackenzies on Facebook. I'm sure you'll find it, but that's Saturday, March 13th at 7. So we're getting treated to some.
If you're looking to see up somebody's kilt for St. Patrick's Day, this is where you want to go.
I was going to say, will Paul flash the camera? Because it's not a Real Mackenzie show until you've seen Paul Mackenzie's testicles.
It's kind of like going to see the Dwarves, except that time we saw the Dwarves and it was very watered down.
Yes. Yeah, I was pretty drunk for that, so I was sobering up by that point, but yeah. Yeah, like you hear so many things about the legendary Dwarves, but that show that show wasn't as crazy as I thought it was going to be. Anyway, moving on. Second item, another live stream. This time from the good people at the Dropkick Murphys. They are putting on a free live
It's
stream.
the
This
now.
one, yeah, it's on the new album title. We'll get to that. Spoiler. Free live stream, March 17th. 7 Eastern again, 4 Pacific. This one is definitely for sure on their YouTube and their Facebook page. You can go to dropkickmurphys.com for more info on that. And to also, they're doing a really cool thing. They have like a tip jar, and they're giving all the money from the tip jar to the crew putting on the show. So obviously with this pandemic, dudes working crew are like they're out of luck basically. It's like shit out of luck. Income's dried up. So it's really cool of Dropkicks. They're not taking any money themselves. It's all 100% going to their crew for putting on the show. Any comments?
Definitely
here,
support those
Scott?
guys. They're great people.
Mm-hmm.
They're great people. I can say
Also,
nothing negative about them.
I don't know about putting the on. I'll talk about it right here. Dropkick Murphys new album coming out April 30th. They also released a new single along with it called Middle Finger. You can pre-order that also from dropkickmurphys.com. So if you do the pre-order, you can also throw a tip to the crew at the same time. The album art was released today. It's kind of cool. I like that they're going with something outside their usual like aesthetic. But I don't know why. Like they've never had the Dropkick Murphys on any of their other albums, and now all of a sudden it says the Dropkick Murphys. That's my one negative thing.
It's now been a quarter of a. Yeah, it's now been a quarter of a century, so we need to change. We got to do something. So let's go Technicolor on the album cover, and let's add a the to our name.
So the new single they released today, Middle Finger, they played it at their last St. Patrick's Day live stream a year ago. At the time, it was titled "Burn It Down" or "Burn It to the Ground." Did you listen to the single, like the studio version they put out?
I don't. I remember hearing it on the live stream, but I don't. At the time, I don't really. I remember being so enamored with Mick Jones' "Nick My Pudding" because that's such a out of left field song for them at this point in their careers. That I remember, like all of us being like, "Holy shit!" at that moment. That like I almost didn't pay half as much attention to the other new songs.
Yeah, Mick Jones' "Stole My Pudding" definitely like stole the show because you're like, where did this like Clash / like Showcase Showdown inspired like punk song come from Dropkick Murphys when they're like in 2020? But it was great,
right? Like I just didn't expect that at all, and I guess they definitely always have some curveballs to throw, and so I'm curious to see what's the rest of this record. We've a lot of the singles that they've put out in the last year haven't made it to the record. At least
I think the only ones on there are like "Smash It Up" and "I Wish You Were Here." I think.
Right. Then
which is kind of sad because like James Connolly is a great song, but we always knew that one wasn't going to be on the album, and we always knew the Bonnie wasn't going to be on the album. That was the one.
Right. That was the one that I really wish did make the record because that would have fit in on a record that they were putting out 15 years ago.
Yes. Oh, for sure. That's like, to me, that's like a quintessential Dropkick song. Like it's got everything. It got the trade-off vocals. It's got the guitar. It's got bagpipes. That's like a very quintessential Dropkick Murphy song.
It's what you expect to hear when you think of the Dropkick Murphys.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so yeah, I listened to Middle Finger, as it's called now, a few times today. It's very pogsy, and some people complained about that. They're like, "Oh, it's just a pogue song," but like Dropkicks like haven't really done a lot of like super pogsy stuff in the past, so it was kind of cool to see them do a song that wouldn't be out of place on like a Pogues album. And I liked it. I thought it was great.
And actually do it in a pogsy way, because I feel like when they tackle a Pogues song, which as they've done in the past, they do it in a very different manner every time.
Yes. Yeah. And the thing with Dropkicks, I think they're one of the few bands who still the songs need to be listened to in the context of the entire album. I find their albums are put together in a very deliberate way. I've talked with Ken about that before, how they spend so much time like with the track sequencing. So I feel like hearing songs out of sequence as a single with Dropkicks, like you don't really get the whole story. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think you definitely have to listen to the record as it comes. I feel like uh, the iTunes experience of the last 13 years has soured a lot of people on that experience, and
Hmm.
I think you know I'm definitely plenty guilty of just making a playlist of whatever the hell I want and listening to it. But I feel like when you sit down and you listen to a full record in the way that the artist intends it to be listened to, you're really doing yourself a favor.
Yes.
That's how they want you to hear it. They don't want you to pay 99 cents on Apple Music, since it's not iTunes anymore, and just get the lead single, and that's it. Like
Yeah.
you gotta give the full thing, and you gotta have the full experience, And there's something to be said, even in 2020, like I think having the experience of buying a record, pulling out the liner notes, checking all that out while you're giving it a
Hmm.
first listen, it's a very personal experience, and I feel like that's how you should fucking do it, people. Just buy the fucking
Yes.
record and listen to it the right way.
I am very much still an album is a book and each song a chapter kind of person. I guess I call it deep
Absolutely.
listening. To me, it's just like listening where you like sit down with the liner notes and read them while you listen. Like I do that with not every band, but like my like favorite bands, they put out something new. I did it with the new Off With Their Heads album. Just laid down, threw the record on and listened to like read the liner notes. Same with the new Pup album. Like that's how you get the experience I
Absolutely.
find the full
I think,
experience. Yeah. Okay. So
yeah, every time I
the
buy
last
a new record, I have to do that.
yeah, so the
Sorry.
last news item is also a live stream. Also from a Celtic punk band, a legendary Celtic punk band at the same level of Dropkick Murphys, I would say. And that is Flogging Molly is also doing a live stream, also on March 17th. This one at 3 Eastern, 12 Pacific. So you could have a pretty jam-packed St. Patrick's Day of live streams. The only difference with this one is it's a ticketed event that you have to pay for. So if you want tickets to watch the live stream, they're selling them at floggingmolly.com. Uh, so I honestly don't know if I'm going to pay to watch this live stream. I'm just putting that out there. Nothing against the band. I love seeing
It'll
them
probably
live, but I don't know if I want to pay to watch a live stream.
I totally understand that.
Yeah.
I think I haven't spent a lot of time with them in the last however many years, but I feel like if their live set is still as within a mile of home and pre heavy as it used to be, it'll be a fantastic
Yeah.
set. I genuinely don't even know what they sound like anymore. So
Um, the new album, Life is Good, is really good. It's definitely a bit more back to form compared to Speed of Darkness. Uh, Speed of Darkness has grown on me over the years, but it's still like my least favorite. And the last time I saw them was like 4 years ago, I think, 5 years ago. The new album Life is Good wasn't out, but Speed of Darkness was out, and they only played like one Speed of Darkness song. It was all like within a mile of home and earlier. But their live shows are still so good. Like they're still
nice.
one of my favorite live bands to see.
They were always a great live band. I don't think I've seen them since probably 2010, maybe, like
Okay.
at absolutely most recent.
Yes, it's been a
But
while.
I do
Yeah, like
remember them
but
always
yeah.
being a very fun band.
And I love Dave's lyrics. Like he's a very good lyricist. I just yeah, it's nothing even personal. I'm just cheap and I don't want to pay to see live stream. Like
Yeah, I totally get it. It's not, it's just not the same experience when it comes down to it, just being there. Uh, not even necessarily being in the front row, but just being in the crowd, being with
yeah.
everybody, and having that communal experience. I feel like that's such a big part of the music, and you definitely lose that element with the live streams. And I paid for the 4 Bad Religion ones that happened back in December, and they were
Oh.
all great. They were all awesome. Like every single one was an awesome performance. They had awesome song selections, but like you just feel like there's something missing.
Yes, for sure. And like
And
it's really like like we're getting to the like beggars can't be choosers. Like we can't have shows, and now we're complaining about live streams. Like maybe we need to get over ourselves.
Right.
But it's yeah, it's there's definitely something missing. Like especially with like punk and like punk related genres, like the crowd is such a huge part of it. Like the bands, like they
Absolutely.
draw so much energy off the crowd. Like when they're playing it to an empty studio, like it's not even the same for them. And you can tell sometimes that, like it's just the energy isn't
Oh,
the same.
absolutely. It's way like I'd almost in some of the cases, like, you know, I think I've watched a few of them, and like
Whoops.
the Suicide Machines one that they did on Halloween was really cool. I thought the Bad Religion one sounded awesome. Dropkick at Fenway was neat for its own reasons.
That was cool.
Obviously, that's just kind of that was just a cool thing. But
It's cool. It's cool that they did
I
that one
feel
that
like,
way. Sorry.
yeah, for sure. And
Because
I feel like to a point though, I'd almost just rather watch a band play in their practice space, like
yeah,
than
like
like
a
set up a
intimate thing.
full. Yeah, like I think that would at least like give you like a little bit more of a personal level than like, oh, we're gonna play to a big empty venue and you're gonna know it's a big empty venue.
Mm.
I don't know.
That's it for the news. That's
I
it
guess
for the outline, pretty much.
I yeah. I mean, I guess like the other thing right now is there's so many shows that are planning to go ahead as scheduled. Like Punk Rock
Oh
Bowling
yeah.
has announced everything again, and for the fall, and Riot Fest, as far as I know, is still planning to be full
Mm,
steam ahead. And you know, I'm really curious to see if they end up happening. I have a
me
Punk
too.
Rock Bowling ticket. Uh, I've I'm definitely on the get it refunded fence right now, uh, because I feel like part of the allure with that festival is all of the international bands, of which now there are none on the bill. But
Yeah.
again, beggars can't be choosers, I guess, right now. And I would definitely go see 99% of those bands were they to play in Burlington tomorrow and it was safe. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I I'm heavily debating getting a Ride Fest ticket, and it's because I want to see My Chemical Romance. Is that the end of the podcast because I
Hey,
admitted
Brendan.
that?
Hey, Brendan.
uh,
How are you?
yeah. Well, I mean, Brendan has taste, man. So, but I'm worried because like the for me the international travel is like another aspect to it. So like I don't want to get a ticket and
Well, yeah,
like be like,
you don't even know if you'll be able
yeah,
to get over the border.
yeah.
I mean,
So, but anyway, yeah, I guess we could have included that in the news section. Ride Fest announced like today or yesterday that they're going forward, and they announced like the first round of bands. So I'm like, oh, do I get a cheap
oh,
ticket? Yeah,
I
they
haven't even
announced
seen that yet.
yeah, they announced like the first batch of bands as well. Some good stuff on there. Pups on there. Somehow Toots and the Maytals are on there, but like
Huh?
he died. Yeah,
That's
I don't know.
yeah, like less than a year ago.
Yeah, I don't know.
Wow. I mean, okay.
Uh,
I don't.
so
I'm curious about that.
me too. Anyway, that is the end of the news segment. That is the end of the episode, I believe, because now I have my conclusion in the outline. So, uh, I'll read the conclusion in my best radio caster
That
voice.
was 10 minutes ago.
Scott, do you want to read like the middle paragraph, and I'll read like the other two? Is that a good way to do it?
Yeah, I'll read the short one there. Of
Okay.
course.
So, we'd like to say thank you. I already screwed it up. We'd like to say thank you to everyone for listening to the inaugural episode of Ramble and Roll, a punk rock podcast. We are excited to see where it goes. We're even more excited to have you all along on the journey. So, like we said, interviews planned, other stuff planned. It's all in the early stages now, but we'll see where it takes us and have some fun. Oh, I just said what you're supposed to say. You say the last part.
That's okay. We'll be back next week with another episode. I mean, it'll be our first official one. This is just kind of again like our get to know you. We don't know what we're going to be talking about yet. I don't think the guest could be anybody. It could be anybody. We might have Glenn Danzig. We're not going to have Glenn Danzig next week. Trust me, people. We don't know, but you know these things can change at a moment's notice. It's a drop of a hat. if you had a hat when you came in, and you know,
You'll have a hat when
um,
you go out.
yeah. Um, so we'll see what happens next week. But we're trying to do this on Wednesday, 7 o'clock. So it'll be same place, same time. We'll be streaming through Michael's Twitch here, and I believe, I mean, are we going to have episodes available for post viewing somewhere, Mike? I believe we are.
Yes. So the plan now is they'll at least be on YouTube, and I'm looking into like the distribution, how you do it for like iTunes and Spotify and stuff. I'd like to get it out on all like those platforms, but uh, I'll figure that out. So this should be up on YouTube by Friday, the 26th of February, 2021.
Perfect.
And if you're watching this on
Not
YouTube,
2022.
no. If you're watching this on YouTube, hello from the past. So yeah, that's it.
Right. Thanks for listening.
I am Mike F. He is Scott Richter. Do you have any social medias to plug? Mine are on the screen, Scott. I didn't make yours. I forgot. So you can follow me on Twitter at MikeF613 or Instagram at MikeF613. We do have a Twitter. I didn't make a graphic for that yet, but it's just Ramble and Roll on Twitter.
Perfect. And I think we'll have an Instagram up pretty soon. I'm pretty easy to find. I'm just such a dangerous everywhere. Instagram, Twitter, you name it. I'm just such a dangerous what? Who knows?
Have to ask brain failure.
But absolutely. Thank you so much, everybody. If there's anybody still tuned in that has listened to all, let's see, 101 minutes of this so far.
Troopers. Okay. That is it for tonight. We'll be back on Wednesday. Have a good night, everybody. We'll see you. Oh my God, I'm so bad at this. We'll get better at this with practice. I'm just gonna click end.
Absolutely.
And
we'll see you on the.
We'll disappear. Get you on the flip side. Okay. It's over. Goodbye. What are you still doing here? Go home.
It's over.
Okay, I ended the stream.